Hello and welcome. On today's episode, we welcome Mark Seymour, CEO of Kriska Transportation Group. Welcome, Mark, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yeah, so this one is, when we started this podcast, we had a vision of doing, people from certain companies talk about, their products and their industry and their background, and then talk to, some personalities within the industry, people like yourself, Kevin Tallman, and kind of dig deeper into the background. So we're happy to have you on as kind of part of that discussion. And because of that, we know you represent the Kriska Transportation Group, and we'll dig into the background there. But I think fair to say that the two worlds are very intertwined, yourself and the company itself. And I guess to start with, maybe a little bit of a background of where Kriska comes from. Obviously, there's a connection between our company and yours, and the families of the two, and how it pulled you into this world as well at the same time.
Well, it is a long story that has lots of connectivity to it. So, my late father was a trucker. He was a licensed mechanic by trade, and that led him into running owning and operating a business, which led to him owning and operating a dealership, an international dealership. And then that led him to becoming friends with Jerry Tallman, Kevin's father, and so I'll get into that a little bit later. But as a kid growing up, I was always around trucks. I mean, my dad was around trucks, and I liked to hang out with my dad. So trucks were something that that I was very familiar with and very fond of, even as a young kid growing up. But as a teenager, I was more interested in other things. Won't mention what those things are, but you can imagine what they were. I had a cup of coffee playing hockey. Spent 2 years in the Ontario Hockey League as a teenager. I guess I was good, but not very good. And it became very obvious to me that I wasn't going to make a career out of playing hockey. Wasn't a very good student in school, so I came home with my tail between my legs after my hockey career ended, or I ended it, I should say, at about 18 or 19 years old, I guess. But at 18, I'd got my license to drive a truck. So I did a little bit of that for my father in the summer that preceded me to quit playing hockey. So my father was a little upset with me when I quit my hockey career, and Kriska was very small at the time, and you might say not a lot of openings. But I just assumed that I'd come home. I was still living at home at the time. I'd just drive a truck for my dad because I had a license, and that's what I knew how to do. And frankly, didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I knew I could do that and needed a job, and thought I would make peace with my father if I joined the rank and file at Kriska. But as I didn't imagine, he was so upset he wouldn't give me a job. So I went to see Jerry Tallman, and Jerry gave me a job. So actually, my first full-time job after hockey was working for what's now the Rush Group, but at that time was called Kemptville Truck Center. Worked in the parts department at a branch in Brockville for a year, and it took a year for my father to cool off. But in that year, I, gained some experience working in the parts department at Brockville Truck Center at the time, and it helped me. Every little bit helps, and that was certainly a good help to me. But if it wasn't for Jerry Tallman, I might still be unemployed. But Jerry was the guy that everybody turned to for a job who couldn't find one, and I happened to fall in that class, in that group at that particular time, and I'll never forget it. We still laugh about it a little bit, but so that was my first job, working for Jerry Tallman at what's now Rush.
It's funny because I know, from my side, when you see the family history and companies, you just traditionally assume, and kind of like, I guess sounds like you did as well, as you kind of grow up, that things are just handed to everybody, and you don't always see the work and the steps it took kind of to get, to where you are today within the company, of how everyone starts. Everyone just assumes, son of the owner, all of a sudden, you're a high role within the company, and like you said, you can even get a job to start with at the company, which is even a crazier story. So I guess after working with Jerry and them, I guess you finally made it into the family business.
Well, I did. As I said, it took about a year for my father to cool off, and I forget who approached who, whether I approached him or he approached me. We were still living under the same roof. I mean, I was a teenager living at home at the time. So somehow, some way, I ended up getting a job working for my father. Started driving a truck. At that time, this is 1983-ish. He had less than 10 trucks. So there wasn't a lot of trucks, and there wasn't a lot of truck driving jobs, but he gave me a job anyway. And, I started driving, which at that time was a very small business. And, from time to time, he'd ask me to do different things. And I wouldn't consider myself a Swiss Army knife by any means, but, being the son, I guess whatever I was asked to do, I did it. And whether it was working in the shop or driving a truck or whatever, I just did it because that's what you did back then. I wasn't really good at anything, but I could do anything. So I guess that's why I often got the tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, right? And like I said, when companies at that size, 10 trucks, it's not, like you said, a massive machine. Everyone's wearing a few different hats. And yeah, I think, like I said, by default, living at home, you're going to get tasked with doing all the things that need to get done that didn't get done,
Yeah.
Or someone didn't want to do. So obviously, as you drive, you add a few more things to your hat. Clearly you grew within the company, and eventually, I think in 95 you become president, but in between then, different roles, different hats, anything concrete, or just kind of, like you said, a little bit of everything to get the job done?
Well, the business grew between sort of 83 and 87. That time period was pre-deregulation. So Kriska operated as a private carrier through those years for two companies, one based in Prescott, RCA, which is a household name television company, and another one in Brockville, less known, called Selkirk. But so my dad had trucks leased to those two businesses, and the growth of Kriska through 83 to 87 really was off the back largely of RCA. As TVs got bigger, it required more trucks. Fewer point. TVs in every truck meant more trucks. So the translation really allowed Kriska to grow. Then 87, deregulation hit. My dad moved the business to Prescott from Kemptville, and in those times with deregulation occurring, Kriska became what was known then as a for-hire carrier. We could work for anybody we wanted. And again, it's one of those moments that I don't remember how it happened. But I came off the road and out of the shop and with a more defined role with the business, just helping my dad sort of navigate the deregulated position we found ourselves in. And being in Eastern Ontario, it opened the doors to Kriska to a lot of companies that we'd not been exposed to, in places like Cardinal and Brockville and Smith Falls and Perth and all around the area, that we just really put some gas on the business, and it started to grow. So 88 to 95, that there was a lot of growth in those days, because we could work for anybody we wanted, not just those that we were contracted to. So those were fun times. My dad was a risk taker. He loved to put the cart before the horse. His mechanics background and his riverboat gambling style. I just remember lots of times he'd go buy trucks just because it was a good deal. Always used trucks, and they bring them home and say, no, you need to go find some work for those trucks. And that's the way it rolled, and it worked. Wasn't necessarily the way it would be, best described in an MBA course, but that's the way it worked. And he loved to buy and fix stuff, and the times just allowed us to get the work to support it. People were a little easier to find then. It was never been easy, but easier. And we just, had the ability to attract truck drivers and people and work, and it all worked out.
It's interesting to see, like you said, you referenced the MBA part, because, you see a lot of everyone goes through school into MBA and comes out with this book smart knowledge of how to run a company. And then you get the, nuts and bolts of how to run a company. And obviously the reality is different than the theory. And, your proof is in your company that, that, like you said, would not be taught in an MBA as far as a way to structure and run a business, but it worked. And I think part of it is because you make it work. You've got trucks on the ground, you need to find homes for them. You're out there hustling to get business for them, and it creates kind of a culture of its own.
Yeah, I mean, my late father, he had a skilled trade. He was a licensed mechanic, so he had some skill, but it was a skill developed from hard work. He graduated from high school, as did I. I mean, I'm not proud of the fact that I didn't go to college or university. At the time I had to make those decisions, I didn't want to do those things. And then time passed me by, and next thing you know, it felt like it was too late. So, you pay attention, you learn from mistakes, you watch what people do, and cross your fingers and toes and hope it all works out. And, our family and our business has been incredibly blessed with good luck, good timing, good people, good friendships, good support. I mean, it's been so much fun, often done from a blank canvas. We don't run it that way now. And frankly, I don't run it now, because there's a lot of people here that have a stake in what we do and how we do it. And it's done with a lot of strategic planning and thinking now, which is not the way it was done back in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, it changed for times. So you got, I guess, more people involved that, necessarily aren't direct family. The optics and I guess the demands are a little bit different than when it's, you guys can sit at home and plan what you want to do as your next step.
Yeah.
So in 95, you become president, if that's correct, in around that time frame?
Yeah, it was 94, 95. It was right. We had just made an acquisition. My late father was still very active in the business then. As I think about my late father's, strengths and weaknesses, certainly one of his strengths was building. He loved to build things, whether it was, actually build something or build a business. He had a lot of successful ventures, some more than others, but he never really stuck with much for very long in his business career. So he liked to work from that blank sheet of canvas, as I said earlier, and didn't like to follow playbooks. So I think when things reached a stage of maturity, it was not as much fun for him. And I think that's really what happened at Kriska, 1994 ish. I mean, he told me I was the president. We didn't talk about it. There was no big unveiling. There was, it was not. He just told me one day, I think it's time you become president. And that was the end of it. But we had just made an acquisition. I think Kriska at that time was about 50 trucks, and the acquisition we made was about 50. So maybe it was that watershed moment that he realized it was going to be no fun because of the complexities of dealing with people and the like, that he felt it was time to step aside and let me have a crack at it. So yeah, that's how it happened. It was a big moment for me. I thought I was ready. Once I was given the appointment, I wasn't so sure I was. And then we went for a number of years. He passed away in 2002. So from 95 to 2002, we had about 7 years of crossing over, which at times was very difficult. But he felt it was time in 95 to hand the keys to the family business to me, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and you've done well with it. You said from 50 to 100 to the size you are today, and the presence that you play in the industry. It's you've taken and run with it, which is great to see. I know traditionally, not in every aspect, but you do see it sometimes in the family business that second generation doesn't have the work ethic. And I think given your background, the fact that you kind of had to earn a spot at the company instead of just being handed to you initially, I think drives the success that you see, where a lot of people who walk in second generations handed the keys and the thing just falls apart. So yourself, I know Kevin's kind of cut from the same cloth as far as what they've done with the company as well. So it's nice to see you've taken it and built on it and grown it to what it is today.
Well, when you're not going to outsmart anybody, you have to outwork them. So maybe that's what has served as the motivation for people like me. So.
And it's well said. I mean, you do see, anything you read or anything people who've been successful. There's no secret to it. It's hard work. You put in the time, you put in the hours, and you said you learn from the mistakes, and you find a way to persevere and succeed.
I love it too. I mean, I just love the business, and I don't know how things would have ever played out if I didn't love it. But I do. I still do, and it's crazy. My family, I'm sure at times questions, what I love more, them or the business. And it's gone from, I guess, from loving trucks as a child to loving the business and the people and just the friendships. I mean, I just love it. And when I don't have anything better to do, I find myself coming to just sit here, and it's weird, but it's part of the addiction, I guess. I'm addicted to this business.
Well, and the industry is that. I think, I've been at it now 20 years, but I did leave for a handful of years. And it was weird when I came back, it was like you'd never left. You realize all the friends you've missed and the connections you've had. And it's such a small knit world. Everybody knows somebody. You said that the friendships are lifelong and they're genuine. That's I think the party industry everyone loves. And I think your involvement in it outside of the business speaks to it. Yourself, the chairman for the OTA, the Canadian Trucking Alliance, and Trucks for a Change Network. You're heavily involved even outside of just the business side of it, but it more so the industry and its impact, provincially and nationally.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've made so many great friends through associations. I've gained so much invaluable experience through those associations, and I'm privileged to be I've been at a point in my life for a while now that I had the time to give to these things. Due in large part to the fact that I got so much out of them, and it puts me in a place with a lot of people whom I value so much. So I'm happy to do it. I've got a ton of examples of things I've done for nothing. I kind of specialize in jobs that don't pay very well, but I love it. It's just fun. It's part of the fun. It's part of why I love this business so much, is because you can have so much. I've had so much fun. You can have so much fun. And part of that is getting out of the office and getting away from, the blocking and tackling that can sometimes wear you down, where you can have fun. And this association stuff is a lot of fun too. So I love to do it and happy to do it. And I've got a son and a daughter that are involved in the business now, and they're starting to get exposed to the fun side of the business by way of some of this association stuff. So they now get why I used to go away so much to do these things, because they now experience the fun in doing so.
They're fun, like you said, and the friendships you have, last a while, and you get to meet new interesting people as well. But no one really leaves. You get a few people to leave, but definitely everyone kind of stays. I think once you're in, you're in. It's really hard to leave. And so I think because of that, the group of, the core group of people get bigger and bigger. And the events, I think, because I think people see the value in the associations as a complement to the everyday business and building relationships, whether it's with customers, suppliers, or just even employees. I think they're invaluable to growing the industry, but also seeing the other side. And they all give back, right? Give back to the community, which I think is another huge benefit of what the associations can do, and even companies like yourself do as well, using your size and your presence to contribute back to the community as a whole.
Well, our parents, our parents, I have two younger sisters, neither of whom ever got involved in the business. Interesting. But they went on to have great careers doing other things. So our parents, they taught us often, and said it often, and demonstrated often to be givers, not takers. So it's a big part of the culture at the Kriska Group, and the early days of Kriska is to give all we can when we can, to whom that needs. So it's part of our value system, and it was due in large part to the way our parents brought us up. So be givers, not takers.
No, that's definitely a good message for everyone, and I definitely, try and instill on my kids too, to not always just be asking, but also make sure you're sharing and giving back. And I mean, they're super young to even wrap their head around that, but I think it comes again from this industry and the associations that, that's a big part, where we've been blessed with this industry. It's, I think during this last year, we've proven that even a pandemic can't really shut us down too much. It's required to keep everyone else going, and so we're blessed to be part of it. And it's always nice to be able to contribute back for those who have been hit hard during certain times. So with regards to the Kriska background, I think you touched on it briefly, getting obviously the Tallman connection and your family's connection. But how did it really start? I mean, you said you got from dealership and then started with a couple trucks. What made your dad get into the trucking side?
Well, so in 1973, I mean, I was pretty young then. I was born in 64, so 9 years of age. Although I remember it, and actually I had lunch with Jerry Tallman a couple of years ago, and I just have so much respect for the Tallman family, and asked Jerry. I won't tell the story, but I asked Jerry, how in the world did you ever end up buying the dealership from my father? And it was then that I learned the truth or heard the truth, which was fascinating. But nevertheless, in 1973, my dad and Jerry, who were very good friends, small town Kempville, Jerry had a Fina station. My dad owned the dealership, which was called Ken Seymour Motors. They made a deal on the back of a napkin. Not a lot of money changed hands. But there it was. And there was Jerry had a partner in the early days, a guy by the name of Bruce Cathcart. And so Jerry and Bruce bought the dealership from my dad and renamed it Kempville Truck Center back then, 1973. So between 73 and 78, my father toiled around doing some other things with trucks, leased some trucks and fixed some trucks and bought and sold trucks. But always something to do with trucks. And as I said earlier, he was a mechanic by trade. So he took great pride in, buying a used truck and fixing it up. And as he used to say, put a dress and some lipstick on it and make it look good and then sell it. So he toiled around with that between 73 and 78. Well, in 1978, Kriska was formed by the late Bruce Cathcart. So between 73 and 78, the partnership between Jerry and Bruce dissolved, and Bruce started Kriska. And Kriska is derived from Bruce Cathcart's children, Chris and Mika. So Kriska, Chris and Mika. So my dad joined up with Bruce, who had already started Kriska, and they became partners, and then that didn't last, and so my dad ended up with Kriska. So Kriska's got nothing to do with the Seymour family and has everything to do with the Cathcart family. And ironically, the Cathcart family and Tallman family is who started Rush, way back in 1973. So small town, everything is connected in some way, shape, or form from a small town. So there's a lot of connection there. But so that's how Kriska got started. My dad bought out Bruce, his partner, put on a couple of trucks working at RCA in Prescott, and the rest is history.
It's wild. I think because your family name has been so synonymous, obviously, with Kriska, you usually think it's tied to some sort of family connection, and it's there's absolutely no connection, which is wild to know. It's a neat little fact to understand. And you talked about, the growth of the company through the 80s and into the 90s when you get involved. And, we had Guy Broderick on a couple episodes ago, a great addition with you guys. And he talked highly about the technology that you guys have got into, and as an industry leader sort of with regards to it. What made you lean towards getting heavy into the technology side, kind of maybe as an early adapter compared to other fleets?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't consider ourselves to be, leading, but unquestionably we embrace the opportunities, and I think it's started a long time ago with the interest, and as different people have been added to the organization, particularly younger people, we've just embraced all the opportunities that exist. And at the end of the day, we run trucks, but what we really need to do is mine data. We need to be as efficient as possible. We need to be as transformational as possible as far as relationships with customers. Trucks are the tools that we use to conduct our business, but we need to be as efficient as possible, and mining data is really important, and you have to have a way to collect it. And whether it's telematics on trucks, communication with our drivers, network optimization through a TMS, there's lots of ways that we can sweep the corners to get the waste out of our business. Certainly, wasting time is something we don't want to do, and wasting opportunities. So we do use a lot of technology, but we've also found ourselves too as being the sort that buy it all but don't use it all to its maximum potential. And we've had some people introduced to the business in recent years that have identified that as a problem here. Is let's decide what we need, and let's decide what we're going to commit to, and let's circle the wagons to make sure that we use it in the manner that it was designed to be, optimal, and not buy everything and not use everything. So we've learned some mistakes along the way by being one of those false starters. We don't want to be that. So
yeah, there's definitely, a lot of data that comes at you, and without the ability to, like you said, mine it and make sense of it, it's just sitting somewhere in a computer that is of no use to you until you can throw some resources at it and figure out really what you need and what's valuable to you to actually run the business correctly.
Yeah.
Another interesting part, in the background, you touched on it, was the giving back. And I think reading through and knowing the background of Kriska, the community involvement, I thought what you guys do was interesting, with regards to obviously some charitable work, but it was, through time, obviously donations, but even equipment. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But also the post-secondary bursaries you guys do for employees, I think is a really nice way to give back to those who are helping you grow the business to be able to give back. I think we see a lot of companies that do external, but definitely, throwing a spotlight on some of the internal support is a nice touch for your employees with regards to helping them and helping their kids kind of grow their education.
Right. Well, we want to be an employer of choice, and we often talk about what are the things that we can do that help differentiate us from others that we're competing with for the same people. Often people want to work for organizations who give to the communities that they work in and serve, and a value proposition is also how can we give back to our employees in ways that differentiate within their lives. So the scholarships started out very, very humbly and honestly when in the early stages of Kriska, when somebody passed away that was really close to the organization, we thought it would be nice to honor those people with a lasting scholarship. And as the business grew and matured, and it was just something we decided to stick with, and I'm really glad we did. And it's quite broad reaching now, and lots of beneficiaries of that sort of thing. But it's a small price for us to pay to make a big difference to the people that serve our business and work within it. So, you're forever looking at the things that you do and dismissing those that don't matter, and doing more of those things that do, and giving into the communities and giving back to our people is really important. And it's never been wavered. It's never been second guessed as not important. So that's why we continue to do it, because it matters.
No, and you said it speaks volumes, I think, to a company when they do those things for the community and for their employees. And definitely it's, as you said, to try and drive some new talent to your organization. It's definitely had its impact. I mean, one of the Canada's best managed companies, best fleets to drive for, and a top fleet employer. So I think it kind of comes full circle. You do the things that drive people to your business, and then you get great people working for you, who then in turn grow your business and grow that profile for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an arms race right now for people, and not everybody that's ever joined one of our organizations has had a great experience. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm ashamed by some that have come and not stayed very long. We try to minimize those bad experiences because we want to minimize turnover, but it's so important for us to have a profile that we can support with evidence that we do the things that we say. And as people look to their next employer, they have the ability to drill down on a lot of data and a lot of information, through reliable sources. So we have to make sure that we're leading in those areas, and we're backing up what we say we do, and that puts us in the best possible position to have the most amount of success to get the best people. Once we get them, it's up to us then to keep them, and that we need to be really good at too. And that'll make us a winner in the long run. And I've said it before, I want to be a part of building a business that lasts forever. Forever is a long time. But if we constantly want to put ourselves in that position, I think we're in a good position to win. And that's all we want to do. Winning is lasting. And I want this to last for a long time beyond me.
And I think I'm seeing it out there. I mean, within your organization, over the last handful of years, you have done quite a few acquisitions of, fleets outside of your normal, backyard, for lack of better words, more into the GTA and trending west through southwestern Ontario, which again grows your presence, gives you some diversity, but also creates, a larger business and a stronger presence in the industry that creates a lasting business. What drove the? I guess maybe part of you maybe already answered it, but the idea to grow through acquisition as you have over the last handful of years.
So between 95 and 2014, we made a number of acquisitions, big and small. And I say big, none were very big. Lots of them were on the smaller side. But between 95 and 2014, I'm going to say we made about 15 acquisitions, and they were all acquisitions that were done with growing Kriska in mind. So as we made these acquisitions, depending on the nature of the market, it was either to gain access to new customers, or it was done to gain access to new capacity. So, if the market's tight, lots of freight and capacity is tight, gaining access to more capacity benefits the business. Conversely, if the market's loose, you've got too much capacity, there's a lot of slop in the system, and your trucks aren't busy enough, gaining access to new customers is very important. So we kind of played off what the market was doing at the time and made probably a dozen to 15 acquisitions, but always tucked in under Kriska. So between 95 and 2014, Kriska grew from about 100 trucks to about 400 trucks. So Kriska just kept getting bigger by way of these acquisitions. We'll call them tuck-in acquisitions for the sake of an expression. So in 2014, the opportunity was really presented by way of me trying to acquire a company known as Mill Creek Motor Freight that was owned by the Mullen Group out of Calgary, Alberta, publicly traded company. And I knew Murray Mullen well enough to call him. We certainly weren't best friends and didn't grow up together, but I crossed paths with Murray and had his contact information. So I said, how about selling me Mill Creek Motor Freight? We had a relationship with Mill Creek, had done some work with them for a long time. So I felt comfortable that would be a good strategic fit for us. And so it didn't work out that in the manner that I had planned, but Murray and I agreed through a number of conversations that we would form a new company called the Kriska Group. And the group was really established by me pledging Kriska to the group and Mullen pledging Mill Creek. So the Kriska Group was launched by way of the merging of two businesses. And so today the Kriska Group is made up of 11, I think, different organizations, but a different strategy than what I talked about earlier between 95 and 2014. So we operate a decentralized model now, where we really want to buy or acquire good businesses that are well managed, profitable, safe, fundamentally strong, where we don't want to disrupt their karma, their culture. We want to leverage off, the goodness in each business and roll it into the group. The group brings some economies of scale to the smaller businesses that are part of the group. Certainly on the purchasing side, things like fuel, insurance, group benefits, things that everybody buys. Because we buy a lot of that stuff, it gets a little bit less expensive, but at the same time allow each of our businesses to be themselves. People work for people don't work for companies, so we don't want to disrupt the good principles of a good business by rolling everybody up into the same sort of flagship and disrupting the culture. So we've had success in doing that, and we'll continue to leverage off of the way in which we're doing it. So from 95 to 2014, we felt very strongly about making Kriska bigger. From 2014 to today, we feel very strongly about not making Kriska bigger, make the group bigger by acquiring good businesses. So that's, we've bought quite a few. We're not batting 1,000 by any means. We've made I don't want to say we've made some mistakes. That wouldn't bode well for anybody that's listening that was acquired by us, because we haven't made any mistakes. But we've learned some things over the way that have made us a little wiser today than what we were earlier, which is only natural. So We have a very strategic approach to growth. We don't make big acquisitions. I'd like to say we specialize in small ball, bunts and base hits, win games too, and so we really like the good small to medium sized businesses. That's not to say we'd never make a big one, but we feel really comfortable with the small to medium sized ones that have good leadership, good culture, good business principles, and by and large leave them alone.
And I've seen that. I mean, your example is a testament to that, and you've seen that with some other acquisitions where, like you said, I think the mindset, in the past was buy a company, rebrand everything, amalgamate them into your world, and make it fit. And I think as you speak to and you've seen the benefit of is, buy good companies that really you're not there to fix them or change them, but they add a complement to what you do. They have good people, good leadership, and you can let them be, but again, leverage the size that you are to help them be more competitive, take out some costs and just be, even a better company than kind of what they were beforehand. And it seems to work. And like you said, the size that they are, usually some of these are, family businesses that, is near and dear to how you guys started. So you definitely understand kind of where they're coming from, but allows you to, fit into your framework, but complementary versus kind of, overbearing them with, your version and your view. I think it's a good way to do it. And we're seeing it kind of more so nowadays in the industry.
Well, change is disruptive, and the more we need to change something, the more it spooks and disrupts people. So best we change as little as possible. Therefore, why we stay away from certain opportunities and push ourselves more towards others. An acquisition for sure is going to make you bigger, but is it going to make you better? And that's kind of a principle that we always remind ourselves of. Is this going to make us bigger and better? Because if it's just going to make us bigger, we're not doing it.
Right.
It takes too much work and too much energy and too much disruption and too much risk to fix something that's broken, at any level. And if we have to do that, it's not worth doing. So it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
You just have to you have to be willing to walk away, and not get too seduced by the opportunity. Mm-hmm. Because when I've got a little bit of my father in me, and that's a little bit of a riverboat gambler. So I've had to learn from mistakes I've made about being willing to walk, and it's not an easy thing to do, but you have to be willing to do it.
Yeah, and recognize it, right? I mean, I think with the experience you've had, with the acquisitions you've been presented, the ones you've done, you definitely see what fits for your model and for your business and what you're trying to do. You guys have a vision of where you want to be and the legacy that you want to leave with the company, and it's got to make sure it helps see that vision through, and not, like you said, not just big for the sake of being big. There's a point behind it, and you said you're not there to fix the problems of of a company, just to add more trucks and people to the company as a whole. So yeah, that's a good point.
I mentioned earlier that I have a partner.
Mm-hmm.
The Mullen Group is a publicly traded company in Western Canada. Murray Mullen's the CEO. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Murray and what they have done. Mullen's a minority partner in the K Group, but with a lot of they brought a lot of accountability to our business, and we run this business like it was publicly traded, but it's not. Privately owned, with a publicly traded partner. So everything we do, we really need to do with a tremendous amount of care and respect to our partner. And that has been transformational for us. We think things through, and try to make, really good decisions, with really good data and really good input from people, because I have a partner. we have a partner, and they've invested in this business with a hands-off approach to this business. And I hope to never be embarrassed by something we said or did or didn't do. And I think to this point, we've been able to avoid that embarrassment and can stand behind what we've done and the results that we've achieved. And that's what I want to keep doing. Till I'm done doing it, that's what I want to keep doing. And, that's the least I can do for our partner. They pledged, a tremendous amount of trust and loyalty to us when they did what they did in 2014. And I owe that to them. And that's what I intend to keep doing.
You said, and kind of, full circle on how we started with, your father kind of, definitely a true entrepreneur spirit as far as how he built the company and went after the growth of the company to how it's addressed today. And like you said, having a partner, an outside partner that, makes it that you make, a different strategic decision, not a, quick off the cuff decision. It's planned out, it's executed with, thought and data, and just with the intention of it being a positive, long-term, lasting growth to the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, that's a great background on yourself, a great history of how you got into the business, from, I guess, technically starting with us and then with your family, to what you've taken it to today and how you've grown it. It's been very impressive. It's been great to see. It's nice to see, these successes with companies that are still private too. Obviously, you have some public partnership, but as a whole, the growth has been through your leadership and direction and what you guys have given back to the industry. So I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. We greatly appreciate it. Definitely learned a lot on the growth of the company and even where the name came from. Had nothing really to do with you guys directly, which is always interesting to learn and find out. So again, I appreciate you again for sitting down and taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, thank you, Jason. And I have to say that so much of what we enjoy today is a result of the efforts of a lot of people. And, it's flattering to take some accolade for that. But I know more than anybody else, it hasn't been about me. It's been about, the efforts of so many. And for that, I'm grateful. And, I'm happy to do very little. Because that means, all the other people get to do a lot, and hopefully they take credit for what's happening. And the Rush family, the Tallman family, we go way back, and I'm so honored to still be a part of their organization. I had lunch with Kevin on Friday. Maybe we'll have lunch again this Friday. Who knows? We're good friends away from work, and they're just such a great partner and have been for so long, since the very beginning. So I want to mention that too.
Excellent. Well said. And thank you. And that concludes today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation with Mark from Kriska, and I remind you to subscribe and check our page at rushtruckcenters.ca for all episodes, current and past. And until next time, thanks for listening.